All right, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Paul Kucha. I'm a program coordinator on EFC's Community Assistance Team, and today we've got our funding for water infrastructure projects. We've got us, EFC, and we're also joined by the Department of Health, Department of State, Homes and Community Renewal, and the Department of Environmental Conservation. Today, we're going to have a brief overview of the state revolving funds, some of EFC and DOH's funding opportunities, a brief overview of the community assistance teams, and then opportunities for DEC, DOS, and HCR to talk about their funding opportunities. So a little bit about EFC. We fund New York State water infrastructure. We have a nation-leading state revolving fund. Since 1990, we've supplied over $39 billion to wastewater projects, over $10 billion to drinking water projects, and over $3 billion in water grants since 2015. We've got basically several different ways of doing funding. The biggest ones that we're known for are the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which provide low-cost capital for sewer and wastewater projects or for drinking water projects. These have a variety of financing and varied interest rates. And finally, we have several robust different water grant programs to focus on easing the cost burden of capital infrastructure projects. So we're going to talk briefly about our types of financing. We've got short and long term. We've got a couple of different interest rates, and then we've got a little bit of financial assistance, and we'll go into those in a little more detail here. So firstly, we have a 5-year term for short-term financing. This is set up mainly to get projects up off the ground and completed. Then projects will normally convert over to a 30-year long-term financing. We have 3 main forms of financing available. The first is the market rate financing, which is based on EFC's bond rating for the project. This was about 4.2%, but will vary on time of year and when the project is put out. The second is subsidized interest rate. This is currently at 33.33% for drinking water projects or 50% for clean water projects. In order to qualify for this, you need to be above the subsidy line on the intended use plan, which we'll get to in a minute. For the 2026 IUP, the drinking water subsidy line was at 60 points, and the clean water IUP had no subsidy line, so all projects were qualifying potentially for the subsidized financing. The final category is the interest-free financing, and that's for projects that meet EFC's hardship criteria. So we're going to talk briefly about our funding opportunities. We've got these listed out with their initialisms to provide at least a little bit of clarification on them. So for our infrastructure and planning funding opportunities, we have the Engineering Planning Grant, or EPG. This is for clean water only, and this is to help projects get onto the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. The second and kind of the largest one we have are the State Revolving Fund, or the SRF. Then we have Water Infrastructure Improvement Grant, or WIA, Intermunicipal Grant, IMG. WIA and IMG sort of go together. We'll talk about them more a little bit later when we talk about our grants. And then we've got sort of a second category here, the Resilience, Innovation, and Security. We have 2 green grants, the Green Resiliency Grant, or GRG, and Green Innovation Grant, GIGP. And finally, we have a set of cybersecurity grants, which are the secure grants. So the State Revolving Fund, or SRFs, operate on a revolving basis. Each year, funds are loaned to communities, and as the principal is repaid, the money cycles back into the program to support new water quality improvement projects. This is set up, you can see how this is set up a little bit in the diagram here. We get seed money from the EPA and from the state of New York, which is combined with repayments and bond proceeds. And these go out to create low-cost funding for wastewater and drinking water infrastructure, and some to also pay for bond repayments. So this is a means for providing low-cost financing for wastewater and water infrastructure projects, and helps keep interest rates low. This is called a revolving fund because it's designed to continue in perpetuity, even without any additional seed money being added back into it. All right, so I mentioned the intended use plan earlier. This is sometimes also called the IUP. This is your first step for accessing funds on the SRFs. So we're required by law to create an intended use plan each year, which lists all the funds that are available and identify how they're going to be used. So when projects come in, they are ranked and scored based on water quality for clean water projects or public health impacts for drinking water projects. And then we use eligible costs and basically lay out where the respective wards are scored and where they come in on the list. So the intended use plan is made up of basically two lists that are nested inside of each other. The first is the multi-year list, which is anybody that's expressed interest in receiving SRF financing. All you need to do for this is to basically submit a fairly easy document and say, hey, I'd like to be on your multi-year list, and get information and start developing a project team. The second is the annual list, which are projects that may receive financial assistance in the current federal fiscal year IUP. In order to get onto this, you will need to have an engineering report. So this is a little bit more in depth on how to access financing. This is a good place to note that you are not required to list your project in the multi-year list to go onto the annual list. It can be fairly easy to do it, and it's a good way to demonstrate that you're interested in financing, that you have a commitment to developing this project. Once you list your project on the annual list, or once you're interested in listing, you do need to have an engineering report and a timeline. And then you'll wait for the annual list to come out and see where you score on that. Once you're on the annual list, you're eligible for financing. This is the point where you're going to start pulling together all of your necessary documentation, like your bond resolution, environmental review documents, SHPO, anything with district formation. And lastly, once you have all that material, you can apply for financing and get everything set up to actually start receiving your financing. And then I'm going to turn this over to Dorian to talk about some of the requirements for the CWSRF.
Hi, I'm Dorian with EFC Engineering. So as Paul said, just going to talk through some of the types of projects that are eligible for the CWSRF, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. This would include the types of projects that are eligible include repairs or upgrades to wastewater treatment plants, repairs, upgrades to the sewer systems. This includes projects that would address combined sewer or sanitary sewer overflows. And then also non-point source projects that would protect water bodies from crop pollution. This includes green projects. And I'll turn over to Ashley for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund.
Thank you. So there is a similar program on the drinking water side. We also offer a low-cost financing to communities. Some examples of projects are installing or upgrading water treatment plants. We can replace or install water mains, help develop new sources, help connect private wells to public water, help construct finished water storage tanks, and those are just a few examples. If you've got questions on if your project is eligible, please feel free to reach out. The only thing that we can't fund on the DOH side are projects whose primary purpose are economic growth and development or fire protection. Thanks.
Okay, and then back to the CWSRF for what types of entities are eligible to receive financing. And this would include what we define as municipalities, which is any county, city, town, village, but it also includes district corporations, county or town improvement districts, school districts, Indian nations or tribes that are within New York State, New York public benefit corporations or public authorities, or state agencies. Back to Ashley.
And on the drinking water side, we fund community water systems. A majority of the projects that we fund are municipal projects. We can fund some privately owned water systems, depends on some details there, but we also fund non-community water systems. And to be eligible for grants, again, those mostly go to municipalities, but if your water system is regulated by the Public Service Commission, you could be eligible for grants. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out.
Okay, here's a high-level look at some of the requirements and guidance we have for projects that are to be funded through the CWSRF. So all projects must, all contracts that are to be funded need to include the terms and conditions. Those are available at our website. That are our standard terms and conditions. And there's different versions for equivalency projects, grant-only projects, or SRF projects. Some of the requirements in those terms and conditions include things like the MWBE or EEO, SDVOB, American Iron and Steel requirements, or Davis-Bacon prevailing wage requirements. In addition to that, all architectural and engineering contracts need to be procured according to the federal guidelines. There's a certification form we ask for this to confirm that. This basically is the public posting firm selection ranking for qualifications-based bidding. And then equivalency, specific to equivalency projects, there are some additional federal requirements, including BABA and DBE requirements. As I mentioned, these our terms and conditions are available on our website. And there's a reminder here that plans and specifications should be submitted 60 days prior to bidding. Slide, please. So for our engineering report or engineering reports to be found eligible and acceptable, they would have to include some standard information like background of the project, the description of the problem, and alternatives analysis. Some other key things would impacts to environmental justice area, resiliency, green infrastructure, consideration for future climate impacts, and discussion of security and cybersecurity. When we receive an engineering report, we perform an acceptability review that would do, it's not a full technical review, but it would check for a few key things. And those are all available to be seen in our engineering report outline, which is on our website. It's back to Ashley, I think.
Thank you. So on the drinking water side, there are 3 separate funding pools through the IJA or the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's lead service line replacement funding for the 2026 IUP. We had significantly more funds than we originally anticipated. So that total is up to $264 million that are available for inventory and replacement. We have not yet made those awards, but we hope to do so soon. So there is 1 more year of lead service line replacement funding after this year. Same with the emerging contaminants funding, as well as the general supplemental. Federal fiscal year 2027 will be the last year that those funds are available. So for emerging contaminants, we do prioritize projects who are addressing PFAS. And for general supplemental, those are specifically for disadvantaged communities, but eligible projects are the same for as our WIA and our SRF program eligibilities.
Hi everyone, so it's Gabby with the EFC CAS team. So now we're going to discuss grant funding opportunities. As you can see on the screen, we'll be discussing ones for infrastructure and planning, so the engineering planning grant, the water infrastructure improvement grant, as well as the intermunicipal grant. EPG is only for clean water. And then our resiliency, innovation, and security grants. So these ones are our green resiliency grant, which is the GRG, the green innovation grant program, which is GIGP, as well as our new program called Secure, which focuses on cybersecurity. So first up, engineering planning grant. It's fund essentially, as it says, it's funding for hardship communities to pay for initial planning of eligible clean water SRF projects. So communities must meet the median household requirements to be eligible. These are in the screen. So our lower communities like Long Island, Mid-Hudson, New York City have different requirements than the rest of the state, just based on things, you know. And then the EPG helps fund that engineering report, which is then required to list your project on the annual list, regardless of whether you get an EPG or not. But so there are grant awards of up to $100,000 for I&I or inflow and infiltration studies, which are usually required by enforcement action. And then all other grant awards are up to $50,000. So then we have WIA, so our water infrastructure improvement grant. So these provide competitive grants to help communities undertake that critical water infrastructure, and for both wastewater and drinking water. So as you can see, our eligible entities are listed there. So things like cities, towns, improvement districts, Indian nations or tribes, public authorities, among others. And these can be paired with both our clean water SRF program as well as our drinking water SRF program. So we have grants for clean water projects. So these are sewer projects. Stormwater projects are eligible if it's related to sanitary sewer. And so those are grants of 25% of costs up to $25 million. Then we have our grants for drinking water projects. Once again, drinking water infrastructure like treatment plants and distribution mains. And those are grants of 70% of costs up to $5 million. And then lastly, our grants for emerging contaminant projects. So those are the ones that are addressing emerging contaminants above the state maximum contaminant level. And those grants are 70% of costs with no cap. And then we have our intermunicipal grants, or IMG, and this one is also available for both clean water and drinking water projects. So this is a good one for projects that involve more than one municipality undertaking like a capital improvement project. So that includes like a shared water quality infrastructure project, consolidation of intermunicipal facilities, like regional facilities, and then the interconnection of multiple municipal water systems. So those grants are of 40% of cost up to $30 million, and they require having one lead municipality apply on behalf of all the cooperating ones. And these projects require a current ballot and binding project intermunicipal agreement, or IMA, between at least two cooperating municipalities, but however many there are, related to the financing and implementation of the project. Then we have our green resiliency grants, so GRG. This is the previous round data, but the last round there was $60 million available to fund grants for flood-prone communities. The minimum project award was $1 million with a maximum of $10 million. And then GRG can fund up to 90% of eligible project costs. So there's specifics about what the projects must do, but disadvantaged communities will receive no less than 35% of those projects. And then next we have our GIGP, so Green Innovation Grant Program. These grants have a maximum of $3 million awards. So these are for a bit smaller projects. And once again, the grant will fund up to 90% of eligible project costs. And these are grants to support green infrastructure, water and energy efficiency, and environmental innovation projects. So some eligible practices are on the screen, but that includes like reusing, conserving, or improving water efficiency, or those innovative approaches to manage water resources sustainably. So yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Nina Tanisi. I'm part of the community assistance team as well. I'll be taking you through a pretty precise dive on the Secure program, which we recently launched on March 11th. So with the Secure program, there's two elements to it. We have the Secure Assessment Grant, which you can generate written cybersecurity risk assessment reports, identify the needs and the next steps to comply with the relevant stakeholders within the agencies DEC, DOP, DOH, DPS. We also have our Secure Implementation Grant, which implements technical and administrative controls to protect systems through CIA, which stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We also have our strength and resilience and incident response capabilities for IT, OT, ICS, and for our SCADA systems. For the assessment grant, we offer about $100,000 to evaluate the cybersecurity. And for the implementation grant for the relating to cybersecurity needs, we have about $100,000 eligible for upgrades to meet the state standards. Now, on the second portion of this, the Cybersecurity Hub, which is a centralized resources for systems, the best practices for secure are the 12 first steps for cybersecurity preparedness, and we do provide some training materials. Consultations are also available pertaining to this, and you can meet up with our community assistance team to see what funding opportunities are available and what makes sense for your project to discuss any cybersecurity related support matters for a particular municipality or region. And that's just a photo of the community assistance team as well. So the project agenda with Secure, it was created by Governor Hochul to build on EFC's technical assistance program and helping communities access funding for their water infrastructure projects. And we focus mainly on small and rural and disadvantaged communities. And we're available to meet with any municipality if a meeting is scheduled with us for a consultation. Our teams are available for consultations, and our agency partners consist of DEC, DOH, DOS, and HCR. And there's a QR code there as well for anyone who would like to sign up for mails and register for upcoming webinars. So upcoming events coming soon with pertaining to Secure. We have the stormwater funding, hardship and income surveys, and we go through some of our IUPs, which are intended use plans, and funding through EFC and DOH, and various other elements. And the CATS team will walk alongside our partner agencies, including New York State, DEC, Department of Health, and state offices and Community Real. Together, we can set up consultations to identify the best funding opportunities for your specific project needs. For more info, review our program guide for funding program overviews, including our program types, our eligible activities, and our eligible applicants, and maximum awards. Sign up for our emails. We do encourage that greatly. And would love to see more people attending our webinars, our events, and our deadlines, and the QR codes are available as well. I'll be handing over to DEC.
Thank you. My name is Lauren Townley. I work for the Division of Water at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Today, I'm going to talk to you about two different grant programs that we have available through the Division of Water. First is the Water Quality Improvement Project Grant Program, also known as WQIP, and the Non-Agricultural Non-Point Source Planning and MS4 Mapping Grant, which we call NPG. So first, the WQIP program, that's available through the Division of Water. It's released annually as part of the Consolidated Funding Application, or the CFA. Just wanted to make a note that the information I'm presenting today is based off of our 2025 round. We expect another round will be released in this spring. Typically it's May. And so information does change from year to year. So just make sure to review the information that's available on our website and look for any updates to the criteria or eligible project types. But typically funding is available for projects that directly improve water quality or habitat, as well as promote flood risk reduction, restoration, and flood and climate resiliency, or for protection of drinking water. We typically have about at least $75 million available. We awarded over $200 million in our last round. And as I mentioned, we're part of the CFA. Applications are typically due by the end of July. So the maximum amount of funding available is based off of the New York State budget. We are pulling in funding from a variety of sources within the New York State budget, including the Clean Water Infrastructure Act, Environmental Protection Fund, the 2022 Environmental Bond Act, and we also pass through some federal watershed specific funding, particularly for the Lake Champlain and Long Island Sound watersheds. The maximum grant award varies depending on the project type. So it ranges from $100,000 up to $15 million for some of our wastewater projects. And just want to make a note, there's a 25% local match required, can be made up of in-kind or cash, as well as federal match if it's not from a federal source of funding in terms of the award. And it's based off of the award amount, not the total project cost. So our eligible applicants, we have 3 eligible applicants depending on the project type. So municipalities, which is an umbrella of the typical municipalities, villages, towns, and cities, as well as municipal corporations, Indian nations, development districts. We also have soil and water conservation districts, and then 501c3 not-for-profits are eligible for a subset of our categories as well. So last year we had a variety of different project types available. There were 9 different categories of projects. Our largest is the wastewater treatment category, but we also have funding available for non-point source projects, as well as land acquisition for source water protection, salt storage and road salt reduction practices. We have a fairly new category for dam safety repair and rehabilitation, as well as dam removal. If you are regulated municipal separate storm sewer system area, vacuum truck funding is available to maintain your catch basins. We have an aquatic connectivity category that's focused on culvert repair and replacement, right sizing of culverts, marine district habitat restoration, and then a Bond Act funded category for fish and wildlife habitat restoration and enhancement. So I'll just touch on a few of our different project types. For wastewater treatment, we have a prioritization of the types of projects that we're looking for. In particular, wastewater disinfection projects and phosphorus treatment projects that are dictated by watershed plan reduction requirements are the highest priority right now. We also are funding projects for other nutrient related reduction projects such as treatment for nitrogen, combined sewer overflow and sanitary sewer overflow projects, and expansion of sewer districts to connect areas on failing on-site septics is also a priority. Anything that doesn't fit into one of those categories is still eligible. We just consider it a general wastewater project. Under the non-agricultural, non-point source abatement and control category, we have a subset of different practices that are eligible: decentralized wastewater systems, green infrastructure, stormwater retrofit, stream bank or shoreline stabilization, riparian buffers, in water body controls for nutrients, beach restoration, culverts, and then programmatic at a larger scale of a subset of those practices are also eligible. Land acquisition for source water protection. This is focused on either permanent conservation easement or purchase of properties in proximity to surface or groundwater drinking water supplies. And there's a couple of different options. You could apply as a project if you have a parcel already identified at the time of application for up to $5 million. Or there's a programmatic option where the parcel does not have to be identified, just the watershed of the source water is identified at the time of application. The applicants are typically municipalities and not-for-profits, land trusts in particular, that are eligible for that category. Next category is salt storage, and this is an expanded category to include road salt reduction practices. So it's either funding for building a structure to cover salt piles or salt sand pile mixture, or the purchase of equipment to make brine or for brine spreading equipment, as well as some other equipment that could be used to anticipate road salt usage. As I mentioned, for regulated MS4 areas, vacuum trucks are available to maintain catch basins. Regulated operators are eligible to apply, or soil and water conservation districts can apply on behalf of a regulated operator. And I just wanted to highlight some examples. We have an online mapper now that shows all of our awarded projects through the WQIP program. But just to highlight a few, we funded a wastewater consolidation project in Chemung County that installed some advanced nutrient reduction treatment for phosphorus and nitrogen to meet watershed plan goals. We've recently funded the town of Newcastle for a new vacuum truck to be used in the MS4 area. Town of Stark received a new salt storage facility. Town of Neenah has received some funding for stream bank stabilization. And then the Finger Lakes Land Trust has received a variety of different grants for protection of water supplies in the Finger Lakes specifically. I'm going to switch over to our planning grant, the non-agricultural non-point source planning and MS4 mapping grant. So there are currently two types of projects that are eligible under this grant. First is the development of non-point source planning reports that support non-point source water quality improvement projects. The second type of project under this grant is mapping for regulated MS4 areas. In total, we have about $3 million available per year to fund both different project types. There's a 10% local match for this grant, and it is also part of the consolidated funding application. So the planning reports, the eligible applicants are municipalities and soil and water conservation districts. Typically up to $50,000 is available for a planning report. If it's for a comprehensive stream corridor study, a little bit larger of an area that needs to be studied, it's a $75,000 grant. And I'm not going to read all of the different planning report types, but there's a big variety of different planning reports that are eligible under this grant. We continuously add different report types, but depending on the need out there. But the idea is, again, to get you ready for implementation funding. So you'll see that there's overlap with some of the categories. So green infrastructure, stormwater retrofit, potentially planning could be done under this program. And then you could apply for either WQIP or GIGP funding. And there's meant to be a connection between the types of projects that are available for implementation. The MS4 mapping is similar to the vac trucks. The municipalities that are regulated under the MS4 permit are eligible to apply, or a soil and water conservation district can apply on behalf of a regulated operator. We do encourage a collaborative approach to mapping. So if municipalities are collaborating on a grant, they can receive up to $400,000 to complete their mapping. It's not required, though. If a municipality would like to apply as a standalone, the maximum award is $75,000. And at the end of the mapping, the intention is to produce a summary report as well as the map product that can help meet permit regulation or permit requirements. As I mentioned, the cooperation is encouraged, and the mapping is done in a GIS platform. It does support advanced mapping as well, if that's an interest of the municipality. We just require that the basic mapping is completed first. And again, some examples of funding that we've awarded to different awardees. The Erie County Coalition for stormwater was awarded $400,000 to complete mapping. And then the town of Wallkill received a standalone award for $75,000 to complete their mapping. Non-point source reports, we actually were doing an inventory and have awarded over 200 different reports in the series of the program. Some examples are Village of Waverly, we're doing a stream corridor assessment, and then Town of Westport for a culvert study. So just some general information for both of the grants. Just want to make a note that our scoring criteria is inclusive of our commitment to awarding projects that impact either environmental justice or disadvantaged communities. It is not required that a community be an environmental justice or a disadvantaged community, but points are awarded based on any benefits that are realized by those communities based on the project location. And additionally, there are scoring criteria that are tied to flood risk reduction or enhancement of flood resiliency, as well as climate change resiliency. So we look at different criteria. There is flood resiliency requirements after award as well that are included in our contracts. And just some general information to keep in mind. We encourage folks to start early. We can assist if there are technical issues with the consolidated funding application. But if you're applying on the last day, it's very difficult for us to be able to give that assistance. So we just encourage folks to start early. Our program overview is still available on our website, and it's available throughout the application period. And we just encourage folks to read all of the requirements. Also double check, make sure that all of your required attachments are included with your application. There are a variety of questions that will be asked in the application process to make that connection to water quality and how the project fits the grant. Our scoring criteria is a part of the program overview. So we encourage folks to look at the scoring criteria and then modify their application based on that criteria. Again, you can self-score your application. And then there is a requirement for an expenditure-based budget attachment, making sure that that is complete and accurate and only includes eligible costs. The eligible costs are listed for each project type within that program overview.
Hi, I'm Carl U. Blocker from the Department of State Local Government Efficiency Program, and we'll be covering some infrastructure funding assistance through the Department of State, as well as a couple of federal programs that are run through our division. Local Government Efficiency, or LGE, and Shared Services Programs. There are two different grant programs under that, and one is the Local Government Efficiency Grant, or LGE, and the other is the Citizen Reorganization and Empowerment Grant. The LGE is an annual grant. It is not currently open. We expect it to be open again later in the fall, and there's typically about $8 million available through that. The Citizen Reorganization and Empowerment Grant, or CREG, is a monthly grant. It's got a rolling deadline of the first Wednesday in each month, and that is more for like water and sewer district consolidations within municipalities. Community development programs, these are two federal programs, the Northern Border Regional Commission, or NBRC, and the Appalachian Regional Commission, or ARC. The LGE program mission is to assist local governments develop and implement new opportunities for savings and to modernize service delivery to their constituents, and to inform local government officials and boards. through our LGE grant program, we typically have about $8 million available. Such as this past year, we are currently in the review process for those grant applications. We received, it's a competitive grant, we received approximately 75 applications for the latest round. That 8 million is broken up into two separate categories. About 7.2 is available for implementation grants and about 400,000 for planning grants. The application is through the CFA portal, although it is not part of the larger CFA program. The deadline for this latest round was February 4th of this year. And as I mentioned, we had about 75 applications. Eligible applicants include towns, villages, counties, cities, school districts, BOCES, and public libraries. With libraries, it all depends on how they are chartered. Also, other special districts, water, sewer authorities, and regional planning boards. Eligible expenses include professional services, contractual services, equipment, capital, and transitional personnel for up to 3 years. For planning projects, the maximum is up to $20,000 per municipality per project, or $100,000 per project, provided you have enough municipalities participating. And it's a 50-50 match, state funds to local funds. And for implementation, it's capped at $250,000 per municipality per project, or up to $1.25 million for a project. And this one is 90 state funds to 10% local funds. If a planning project that we funded leads to implementation that we funded, you will get approximately 80% of your planning dollars back, 80% of your local planning dollars. So at the end of the day, the planning project would also be a 90-10 match. Target functions were functions identified as posing unique challenges and opportunities for local governments. And these are functions that we have designated as being of importance, and they do get some priority points when we review. And this includes such things as IT services and cybersecurity, emergency services such as EMS and ambulance services, and multi-municipal or countywide code enforcement, and planning. Also water and wastewater or infrastructure projects, and also projects that target climate change mitigation. The qualification grants, this is either for counties or for a regional planning board. And it's a one-year grant for up to $25,000 to help evaluate and select a project for a future round of the LGE program. Separate competitive application, including, this is for a qualification grant, expected number of co-applicants, number of services and functions that are going to be analyzed, the regional planning experience, proposed deliverables, budget, and a work plan. Our Craig grant implements General Municipal Law Article 17A, and that is basically for local government such as villages or special district consolidations and dissolutions. These grants are non-competitive, and as I mentioned, it's a monthly deadline. The maximum for this is $100,000 per project, and that would be a $50,000 maximum for a study and $50,000 maximum for implementation. Eligible applicants for Craig include towns, villages, and special districts. And it would essentially be the same eligible expenses, contractual, construction and equipment, capital, and transitional personnel. Here's a couple of examples of some previously funded projects. Excuse me. In our latest round of LGE, the Village of Copenhagen got 1.25 million for a shared municipal water infrastructure between Copenhagen and the villages of Carthage and West Carthage. Also from 2025, Wyoming County got $75,000 to update a 2012 countywide water feasibility study. And the town of Niagara received $25,000 for a Niagara Sewer District consolidation study. And that was through Craig. All right, the Northern Border Regional Commission, or NBRC, is a federal grant program that is administered through the Department of State. And the mission is to catalyze community vitality and economic prosperity in the northern border region with flexible funding and strategic support. The regional vision is that the NBRC envisions a future where heritage industries are celebrated, preserved, and supported. Vibrant local communities form a rich tapestry of culture, ideas, and experiences, and the seamless integration of emerging technologies fosters a new era of prosperity and economic resiliency. You'll see the participating counties within New York State. They're not necessarily all in the north. You'll see that Sullivan and Greene counties are now part of the NBRC program, and you'll notice that there's some counties that are shaded lighter, and that is all based on the percentages, either 80-20 for the darker, or for the lighter green, 50-50. And the NBRC is basically a 4-state partnership program: Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and parts of New York. It's basically federal funding with state priorities. Applicants are municipalities, nonprofits, and educational institutions, and other community organizations. And it funds both planning and implementation. There are several different investment categories for the NBRC program, and that includes infrastructure such as transportation, sewer and water, telecommunications, and alternative and renewable energy. Also, another category is workforce, entrepreneurship, and business development, basic healthcare for distressed areas, and conservation, tourism, and recreation for economic development. There are several different programs for 2026. One is the Catalyst program, and that is annual base funding to invest in state economic development priorities that modernize and expand the northern border region's basic infrastructure and revitalizes communities to support and attract the region's workforce. Timber for Transit is to advance the use of domestic forest projects and transportation infrastructure projects to showcase the capabilities of wood in these applications. And lastly is the Forest Economy Partnership, and that is to support the forest-based economy and assist the industry's evolution to include new technologies and viable business models. For funding and match for the federal fiscal year 2026, there's 42 million in an annual appropriation. And this is the final year of the IIJA, and for that, there's 30 million for this year. For spring 2026 funding, there was 8.5 million available for New York Catalyst, 6 million for the Forest Economy Partnership, and 14 million for Timber for Transit. Project funding and match. They're up to, I believe that's supposed to be 3 million for infrastructure for municipal priorities with prior state approval, 1 million for an infrastructure project, and 500,000 for all other project types. Project or grants or reimbursements of previously paid and eligible expenses, and you can get up to 80% federal funding per project. Program dates for 2026, the spring round. The pre-applications were due February 27th. And then once the pre-applications are approved, the actual application is due before 5 p.m. on April 26th. For the fall round, pre-applications are due by 5 p.m. on August 28th, and the applications themselves are due by 5 p.m. on October 16th. And these are all through the NBRC portal. Here's a couple of examples from previous rounds of NBRC funded projects within New York. Last year, the Village of Avon got $1 million for a water treatment plant upgrades and modernization to support multiple municipalities and business users. That was in the fall. Spring of 2025, Village of Waddington got $793,000 for a water main replacement within the downtown district. In fall of 2024, Keene received $1 million for municipal water upgrades in the hamlet of Keene Valley to support small businesses and tourism. Village of Granville in spring of 2024 got $350,000 for a water main extension to serve the community's commercial corridor and mixed-use development. In 2023, the town of Henderson received $1 million for the construction of a wastewater treatment and collection system to support their outdoor recreation economy. The ARC program is another federally funded program that's run through our office. And you'll see the map here. It's basically the southern tier part of New York that is part of the ARC, along with the other indicated states along the eastern coast or seaboard. Appalachian region makes up over 200,000 square miles, including 13 states and 74 local development districts or LDDs, 423 counties, and approximately 25 million residents. The economic status versus all of U.S. counties, 77 of those counties are distressed, which are the lowest 10% nationwide. There's 103 that are at risk, which are in the bottom 25%. 226 transitional, and that's in the middle 50%. 14 competitive, which is the upper quarter, and then 3 that are listed as attainment, which are the top 10%. In New York, the ARC region makes up basically 14 counties, 3 local development districts, approximately 1 million residents. And they would be within 12,600 square miles. It's a 13-state partnership again, like the ARC or MBRC, I mean, it's their federal funding for state priorities. Applicants are municipalities, nonprofits, educational institutions, and other community organizations. And the match is 80-20 or 50-50. And again, this also covers planning and implementation. For ARC investment goal areas is to strengthen business and entrepreneurs, build critical infrastructure, develop a workforce ecosystem, foster leadership and community capability, and invest in culture and tourism. The ARC funding, this is ARC wide. It's approximately $200 million per year. New York's allocation for 25-26 was $3 million in area development and 4.4 in the IIIJA category, and that will be through fiscal 2026. Competitive opportunities for all ARC locations. There's 65 million available for POWER, which is Partnerships for Opportunity and Workforce and Economic Revitalization, and 13 million for INSPIRE, which is investments supporting partnerships in recovery ecosystems. Here you'll see a breakdown of the 2025 accomplishments. This is available off of the ARC website. Contact information, the program manager for ARC and NBRC, as well as the local government efficiency, is Kyle Wilbur. And you'll see our main number is 518-473-3355. If you have any questions or project ideas, and there's his email address, as well as the general email address, which is www.dos.ny.gov.
Thanks. Good afternoon. This is Charlie Fillion, one of the program directors here at Homes and Renewal. All right. Paul, if we just go to the next slide. So again, CDBG is a comprehensive program, and this is just a quick list of the various activities. It's not just infrastructure. There's a number of activities that we can support and fund through the CDBG program. And next slide. So CDBG differs from most infrastructure programs because it is people-based, not system-based. Every CDBG project must demonstrate a direct benefit to people, not just infrastructure assets. That requirement shapes where CDBG fits best. It is strongest when infrastructure directly serves residential areas, supports existing housing, or addresses public health and safety risk affecting people. It's not intended to fund speculative growth, oversizing, or infrastructure designed primarily for future development. In a co-funding context, CDBG often plays a targeted role. It may fund the residential-facing portion of a larger project, address affordability gaps, or support compliance requirements that other programs cannot. Understanding this role up front helps partners align scopes correctly and avoid compliance problems later. Under the 2026 RFA, or Request for Applications, CDBG explicitly allows funding for core public infrastructure activities. These include drinking water source, storage and distribution systems, sanitary sewer collection and treatment, and stormwater and flood control improvements. Municipal utilities are eligible when they serve residential populations. The RFA allows limited ancillary infrastructure, such as road restoration or sidewalks, but only when those elements are integral to an eligible infrastructure project. Other ancillary activities could include lateral connections to private residences, These costs are capped at 15% of the CDBG award and cannot be funded on a standalone basis. The central eligibility test is whether the infrastructure investment is necessary to protect public health and safety for existing residents. In practice, CDBG often funds the portions of projects that directly serve homes in neighborhoods, components that may not be fully eligible or funded under larger capital programs. One of the most important uses of CDBG is infrastructure in support of existing housing. These projects are justified because the infrastructure investment is necessary to protect occupied residential units and maintain housing stability. Examples include water or sewer upgrades serving existing neighborhoods, septic system conversions needed to protect groundwater, replacement of failing laterals serving low-income housing, and infrastructure improvements in manufactured or mobile home parks. In each case, the infrastructure is tied directly to housing outcomes. This category matters for co-funding partners because many infrastructure projects cannot fund housing adjacent components on their own. CDBG can fund the residential facing scope of a larger project, ensuring that housing is not left behind when systems are upgraded. From a compliance standpoint, these projects often align cleanly with CDBG national objectives, strengthening applications and reducing implementation risk. Every CDBG funded project must meet one of three federal national objectives. For public infrastructure, the most common benefit is low to moderate income persons. For this low and moderate income benefit, at least 51% of the persons served by the project must be low or moderate income as defined by HUD. This is not a funding allocation test. It is a people-based test tied to who benefits from the infrastructure. Slumber blight may be used in limited circumstances where infrastructure deterioration is documented within a designated area. There's also urgent need, including imminent threat, and is reserved for conditions of recent origin, posing a serious and immediate threat where no other funding is available. National objective compliance is not optional and cannot be assumed. It must be documented, defensible, and maintained throughout the life of the project. This is one of the most common risk areas for otherwise strong infrastructure projects. Meeting a national objective requires a clear methodology supported by documentation. For infrastructure projects, this begins with defining the service area and identifying the population directly served by the project. Where the service area aligns with the HUD-approved census geographies that already qualify as low or moderate income, applicants may rely on census data. Where it does not, income surveys may be required. These surveys must be statistically valid, confidential, and conducted in accordance with HUD guidance. Methodology becomes especially important for projects serving mixed income areas, mobile home parks, or unincorporated hamlets. The way the service area is defined drives the compliance outcome. The methodology approved at application becomes the compliance framework for the life of the project. Weak methodology often leads to monitoring findings, repayment risk, or delays during construction. This is why early planning and coordination are essential in co-funded projects. The RFA recognizes that many communities are not immediately ready for construction funding. CDBG planning and technical assistance grants support the work that makes infrastructure projects fundable. Eligible activities include feasibility studies, preliminary engineering reports, and project-specific planning needed to refine the scope and cost estimates. These activities must meet a national objective at the time of award and must ultimately support projects that do. For small towns, planning grants are often the most effective entry point into a co-funded infrastructure project. They improve readiness, strengthen future applications, and reduce risk for all funding partners. So what this RFA requires, CDBG Non-CDBG funds must be available and committed at the time of application. We've got our co-funding partners on the call today. If you are receiving funding from them, documentation must be included with the application that shows that these funds are available and committed. CDBG applications are scored across 4 categories: need, impact, administrative capacity, and commitment and readiness. Together, administrative capacity and readiness account for 60% of the total score. For co-funded infrastructure projects, this means that funding commitments, project schedules, permitting status, environmental review progress, and partner coordination matter as much as the infrastructure need itself. Projects must demonstrate the ability to move quickly after award, including submitting a request for release of funds within 60 days and making substantial progress within 6 months. Projects with unresolved compliance issues or uncertain funding sources score poorly under these criteria. From OCR's perspective, readiness and capacity reduce risk and ensure timely delivery of infrastructure that communities need. So just some background. This is the representation of our 2025 awards. So it does include infrastructure. It does also include our other activities, housing rehab, economic development. We have an imminent threat category and the community planning. So again, you can see statewide, this is where our funding went in 2025. This is the distribution. 2025 was an unusual year for us. We used old money, I guess, to fund significantly above where we'd anticipated. It wasn't just with the infrastructure, but all our categories, housing, the economic development, the infrastructure, the imminent threat, community planning, everything received substantially more funding than what we had initially anticipated. Total of 92 projects were awarded in 2025, and $313 million has gone on the street since 2020. That does, I believe, include some of our CARES funding that we also received. So we do have an eligible communities list that is important for everybody. This is from our website. The link on the bottom left is live. It's a list of county by county, so you can click on the county. If you're in Albany County, it will bring up a list of all the eligible communities within the county that are eligible for CDBG. So some takeaways, focus on residential service areas and housing stability. The service area and lower moderate income methodology matter, and committed funds and aligned projects score much higher. And our contact information, again, Scott and I co-direct, and you can get a hold of either one of us, or you can submit your questions to us at ocrinfo@hcr.ny.gov.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Got the contact emails up for all the agencies that are on this call. So we've got ESC, DOH, DEC, DOS, and HCR. And I think at this point, we're good to take questions. Jess, can you stop the recording, please?